Hi there, welcome to the Fierce Factor podcast. I'm your host, Kaeli Lindholm. And I think it's time for us women to shift the conversation in business and step into our feminine leadership to do the most iconic work the aesthetic industry has ever seen. Each week, I'll be bringing a powerful dose of strategy, sarcasm, solutions, and sass that will rev up your creativity and ignite your brilliance as you link arms with me along our shared path of personal and professional growth in 20 minutes or less. Let's go. Hello, leader. Welcome back to the Fierce Factor podcast. It's Kaeli here, and you are tuning in to episode number 242. As you know, I try to be as transparent and real with you here as I possibly can. And truth be told, much of what I share on this podcast is not only based on the realities of experiences of women I coach on a daily basis, but also truths I happen to experience as a female entrepreneur and leader of a rapidly growing company and team. If you've read my ebook, The Diary of a Female Entrepreneur, you have had a front row seat into my brain and you know what I'm talking about. And it's interesting when I look back at the early days of starting my consulting business, I kind of laugh now at how much I thought I knew, but how much confidence I used to have in my knowledge and my expertise and my value. And don't get me wrong, I still believe tremendously in myself, but in a much more humbled way, because entrepreneurship has taught me more about myself than I ever imagined possible. Beginning with the fact that I am not a naturally skilled communicator. I have had to learn the complexities of enrolling others into ideas, sometimes ones that haven't even been fully fleshed out yet, in a way that inspires them to buy in at all levels, to adopt those ideas as their own, and to architect a pathway for themselves to grow within the umbrella of that overarching vision. I've had to learn how to reverse engineer big goals into practical and actionable activities and hold people accountable to achieving them, which has required me to have very difficult and uncomfortable conversations. And yeah, that's pushed me out of my comfort zone. And I failed more times than I can count on my two hands at building and growing my team. And I've pushed myself to levels of physical exhaustion and emotional discomfort, sometimes all in one day, in ways others might not ever even attempt in their lifetime. I'm sure you can relate. For all that I am proud, I am also quite grounded because I've learned how utterly human I am. The interesting thing about the humanness of someone like me, and I surmise someone like you, who is pushing yourself to expand in unexplainable ways, when I really stop and get quiet and think about the road of leadership, what's on the underbelly of that, it's actually quite lonely. Being a leader is universally lonely. I mean, I even was thinking about this and remembering as far back to a day in high school when I was a freshman trying out for the varsity soccer team. And the coach divided us players into groups to do races across the 50-yard line of the field. And I remember we were all lined up and he blew the whistle. And I, of course, was in the front of the line and took off sprinting, starting my team in first place. And I came back and it was like a relay. I slapped the hand of my partner and she exploded off the line and we were getting noticed. And then as she went to go pass our next team member, she slapped her hand. And instead of rocketing off the sideline, she, a starting upperclassman who had really nothing to prove, just jogged more like a trot, like a very gloating, look at me trot, almost as if to gloat that she had already made it. So she didn't have to try. There she was trotting along. And I turned around and instinctively just screamed, "Pick it up." And you know what came out of me? I was telling my son Cooper about the story. He was like, "What? You actually said that?" Yeah. And let me tell you, it was as if I had called the queen ugly. She stopped and looked at me, stared me up and down, and telepathically collected eye rolls from every other senior on the team. And I bit my tongue so fast. Suddenly realized that I had not earned the right to speak up to her like that. I left that day feeling so defeated. Obviously, it stung so deeply that I still vividly remember this, and I'm sharing it with you today. But I remember sauntering home through the front door and sharing the play-by-play with my mom and her telling me, "Kaeli, leaders lead no matter who is following." And at the time, I thought I would never be liked or popular or accepted by girls like the soccer studs I idolized. But the reality of how that unraveled was unexpectedly exactly the opposite. The coach was super impressed by the whole thing and put me on the team. And the girls, well, guess what? They appreciated having a tenacious and unwavering teammate like me. And my reputation was restored. It's so interesting how often I flash back to my childhood as I relive similar feedback loops as a grown woman navigating the complex journey of entrepreneurship. I can't help but wonder if those experiences, like the one at the soccer field, were only tests to strengthen my resilience to lead in this bigger arena now. I felt compelled to share this story and some of my recent thoughts around entrepreneurship with you in today's episode I'm calling Leadership Loneliness, because I don't think this type of loneliness is uniquely reserved for entrepreneurs either. It's a feeling that transcends job titles, genders, ethnicities, and ages. In fact, I met with our practice manager mentorship group last week and experienced the generous vulnerability of them sharing how lonely it can be to manage a team. And man, I can feel that, particularly for the high growth leaders we work with. We're talking about women who may have started as the first or second employee for a provider. They were their catch-all business generalist, the machine behind the scenes, and then became the confidant in the company as the business grew. And the one who was the big sister to all the other employees and the one who continued to evolve and push herself to grow into a boss lady role in her company. And at some inflection point, she's suddenly required to no longer be the friend of the team members, but instead to become their leader, which requires making decisions to protect the business, regardless of how excited the team is about them. And sometimes it can feel for a growing manager like they aren't part of the pack anymore. It's the realities of growing a business, and also what's been so rewarding to watch as our managers go through their own personal growth evolution. I'm just really proud of them. I'm not going to lie. If you really think about it, you could realize how truly unglamorous leadership is. I think back to my time in corporate America. When I compare my time in leadership, there are many similarities, but also so much contrast. When you build a business from scratch, it's a manifestation of what's in your heart and soul. It's a piece of art that sometimes feels like birthing and parenting a child, painful. And also because of that pain, that struggle, that overcoming, that growth ensued, it's also the most rewarding thing I've ever done. But there are also some realities of entrepreneurial leadership that no one talks about. I just want to be a damn leader today and put those out on the table. Maybe you can relate. First of all, many people will have opinions about how you're running your business, how you should or shouldn't grow, how much time you commit to XYZ, who you should be like, where you should travel to, what you should buy or not buy, where you should expand, how much cash reserves you should keep in the bank, what percentage of budget you should spend on employees, how you should manage an issue. But the reality is you're still holding the bag at the end of the day. How you decide to interact with the opinions of others will directly affect the results you experience in your life. And no one, let me repeat, no one knows what your deepest desires are, what questions you ask yourself on repeat, and how you might want to live your life differently. In fact, sometimes it's those deepest knowings that we push down and ignore or put those dreams on the back burner because of the opinions of others who are just really probably giving us the best advice that they can. What if you never asked the opinion of anyone else ever again? What path would that take you on? I wonder, does that sound frightening or does that sound like a relief? I think it's an interesting question to ask yourself because it might reveal to you how much you lean on the opinions of others to guide you. There's no right way to build a business and there's no right way to live your life. It's your life. Secondly, no one will ever love your business as much as you. You can enroll the shit out of people into your vision, but here's the deal. It's your company. You can't expect your team or anyone else for that matter to actually understand what your business means to you, even your spouse. As helpful as others might be, this wasn't their vision. Even if they're doing the very best they can to support you, they will never have the level of intimacy with your business as you do. And you can choose to let this disappoint or frustrate you, or you can choose to accept this as a reality and step up to the challenge to find a way to learn what makes the people around you tick. so you can engage them to support your vision in a way that allows them to pursue their own dreams. Sometimes if I let myself think about the fragility of my business without the support of others, it actually helps me think bigger and honor the gift of leading them with greatness. Thirdly, the higher you climb, the fewer who will be there waiting for you at the top. A mentor of mine used to say, people will support you until you exceed their expectations of you. Meaning people like you in the box they put you in. They see you as someone who plays a certain role in relationship to their ideal version of themselves. And when you disrupt that, you create an uncomfortable mirror situation where they have to see themselves in the light of who they are versus who they wish they were. And listen, we've all done this. Do you ever look at your own Instagram and get triggered by someone, feel jealous, or maybe that person irritates me and I don't know why? It's actually a really useful exercise to explore that feeling. If someone's making you feel insecure or just energetically off, ask yourself, do they have something I wish I had? If so, what is it? And do I really want that? Another lesson in leadership. Leaders are always questioning themselves and looking to reframe their mindset to see things from a different perspective. And if the people you lean on to mentor and support you are not investing in renewing their own mind, at some point you will outgrow them. And leadership lesson number 4 is that you can't make everyone happy. This one is hard, especially since our brain is primally designed to seek pleasure and avoid pain. And one of our most primal instincts is to find comfort in community. This explains the pit in my stomach the day I decided to instinctively react when my teammate in high school was dogging it in sprints. So what this means for us as leaders is we're probably going to have someone upset with us most of the time. Maybe it's someone on our team, maybe it's our spouse, maybe it's our Allergan rep, maybe it's our social media contractor, maybe it's our dog, hopefully not the dog. And the beautiful thing about that is it's okay. Our job isn't to make everyone happy. It's to build an infrastructure of boundaries to protect the beauty of what we are building to serve our customers, our team, and the people we love at the highest level. The next lesson is leaders move in silence. I see even my own competitors all the time, and I really use that term competition loosely, but others who try to copy or mimic our business, they're making big moves and big announcements about rebrands and websites and programs. But guess what? I'm silently and strategically analyzing data, talking to the market, making predictions, and privately making baller chess moves to improve my internal client experience, which no one can see. So of course, I have moments of FOMO. And when you build your business this way, it's lonely. At the end of the day, this goes back to being so committed to clarity around your life goals that you know internally you are making critical decisions in alignment with your values and prioritizing the things that matter, both with your money and also your time and attention. I believe that one of the greatest mindset principles of high-performing, resilient leaders is to have the willingness to do it alone, but the skill of leading in a way that inspires others to follow. And I think this level of courage ultimately will magnetize the right people around you. But it doesn't happen the other way around. You have to lead before someone else will be willing to follow. What I mean by that is it will always be lonely before it's not. Leaders have to make the decision even when there's no right answer. I remember having a high stakes conversation with many business owners seeking my advice during the 2020 pandemic. Conversations like, do I continue to pay my team members or furlough them? And this was certainly a situation I didn't envy. Fortunately for me, I have a virtual company. We could continue to serve clients at the highest level. But for brick and mortar medical practices, these were complicated decisions. What's right for the business? Can we afford this? What will happen if we do or don't? What if we do and drain our resources? What if we don't and we lose our team? Ultimately, these kinds of high-level decisions have to be made even in the face of total, complete uncertainty. This is also why you might notice your team members coming to you for answers and approvals on a million different decisions. They haven't quite developed this muscle because on the other side of every critical decision is someone who has to take accountability for it. The next leadership lesson is that true leaders fail publicly. When you're following someone else's lead, you have the privilege of watching them move, see how others respond to their moves, what's working, what doesn't work, and then you make your move. That's why if you've ever heard the term first mover advantage in business, well, that's only when the first mover actually succeeds and there's a lag time before someone can catch them. You can look at notable examples of this in business, one being Airbnb, whose founders tried to rent air mattresses in their apartment, initially failing to gain traction and even selling branded cereal to stay afloat. Or the classic story of Jamie Kern-Lima, who I've talked about on this podcast before, was turned down by 100 investors before taking her product, It Cosmetics, onto QVC, personally showing her products and experiencing record sales to ultimately get acquired by L'Oreal for $1.2 billion. I love that story. Haha to those investors who didn't want to invest in her. But these stories may just sound like tales of persistence, but they're also stories of people who had to fail with a spotlight on them. And while they're hugely successful companies, they were at one time founders like you and me who put even their reputation on the line in order to make an impact. Leadership is doing it scared, doing it when no one else gets it, moving when no one else is cheering, and upholding the highest standards to protect what we built when others attempt to copy or steal it. I thought this was an important conversation to have today because I think the common perspective of leadership is misleading. You don't get to make a post and go viral and become a leader. You get to show up and face the human experience, which is 50-50, meaning for every high, there's an equal and opposite low. And if you aren't prepared for that, your default mode is trying to get out of pain and live in comfort. You will miss the point. And quite frankly, leadership isn't for you. And you can't be successful because you won't have developed the skills that it takes to become a leader. If you want to call yourself a leader, it means you have to show up and do things others aren't willing to do. My husband has a chalkboard in our garage that says, if you want to be exceptional, you have to be the exception. I think of this often. The reality is most people want the tool, the resource, the answer guide. They'll DM me for tips and insights and education, and yet don't understand that the answers are in the doing, in the trying and failing and getting back up, in the learning through experience, in the execution of the free guidance they get here on this podcast, in the investment of support, coaching, and accountability to manage their mind through the risk they take betting on themselves. That is when the tool is useful. If I give you a perfect compensation plan and KPIs for an employee, are you going to show up and set the vision for your company? Are you going to hire and fire to your core values? Will you cut dead weight on your team, even if that employee's been with you for 10 years? How will you navigate the conversation when the employee doesn't hit those KPI metrics or asks you for a raise? What happens when an employee leaves and starts a business down the street? How will you respond when the company grows and those KPIs need to be adjusted? Leadership isn't about the answers, leader. It's about taking a head first plunge into the deep end of uncharted waters and figuring out how to dodge sharks and swim to safety. It's in the doing of exceptional, lonely things that most people aren't willing to do. If you're new to starting a business or you are thinking about it, please listen. Building a sustainable business on a solid foundation is not easy. You will not become a millionaire in 1 year. You will probably not earn $1 million take-home income for many years, probably until your business easily clears $3.5 to $5 million per year in gross revenue. This will take skills you do not have. Learning how to emotionally self-regulate being number one. Learning how to be okay with disappointing others. Learning how to have very uncomfortable conversations. Learning how to do things that upset others at times to protect the integrity of the business. Learning how to say no to opportunities you may have once dreamed of getting. Learning how to discipline yourself with your finances. The list goes on. I'm not saying this to discourage you by any means. I'm telling you this because this is the reality of what it's going to take of you. I don't care what some consultant or Instagram coach promises you about a business turnaround. Building, growing, and sustaining a healthy business will never have a finish line. It will be the most challenging thing you have ever done in your life, and the challenges will never end. But if you're up for it, you will get stronger and smarter and more self-assured. You will experience rewards that you can't even imagine. And you will evolve into the kind of person you only dreamed of becoming. A person who magnetizes others, and through that, magnifies impact in the world. But this will never happen unless you're willing to do it scared, take a leap with no guarantee of return, and do it alone. Okay, leader, thanks for letting me share some thoughts that have been on my heart. as we are approaching the end of the year. I am more than ready than ever to roll up my sleeves and support you at an Olympic level if you are ready, willing, and able to invest in yourself in exceptional ways. Okay, chat with you, same place, same time next week. Listen, leader, if you're vibing with me here, hang tight because I have a brand new resource for you. You are a successful, confident, powerful woman who just isn't into being average. No, you have a calling. And part of that calling is requiring you to level up. And I know that if you're working across the next $1 million milestone in your business, you need to be in the right circles. And perhaps that's why you found us. I'd love to invite you to join The Blueprint, a weekly resource for inspired, provocative thinkers who are taking this conversation to the next level. Get access to free business tools, podcast supplements, guideposts, and direct communication with me and my expert team. And of course, a masterfully curated circle of women making big moves and disrupting the status quo in aesthetics and wellness. You can link directly through the show notes or head to kaelcconsultants.com/blueprint. It's time to elevate. See you there, goddess.